Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning.
Thanks everyone for joining us for our first FlexPoint Fireside Chat, and certainly Rachel, thank you for being with us. Our vision
Pleasure to
for
be here.
our vision for these conversations is really to connect with experts in the field of technology modernization and digital transformation, and talk about war stories and tips and tricks and things that are working really well across different industries. And we're so thrilled to have Rachel as our very first guest on the Fireside Chat. Rachel and I, we've worked together on a number of big transformation initiatives over the years. And she wrote a blog post recently about some really cool stuff they've got going on at Carousel Motor Group. And we thought that would be a great topic for today's chat. So really thrilled to have you. Before we jump in, for those that don't know you, tell our audience a little bit more about you and your background and Pohlad Companies.
Sure. Well, thank you. And I am very excited to be here. Excited, as always, to collaborate with you, Michael. So my name is Rachel Lockett. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Pohlad Companies. And the Pohlad Companies is a privately held, family-owned group of businesses based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Most people around here know the Pohlad family for owning the Minnesota Twins, but we also have Carousel Motor Group, a group of primarily luxury auto dealerships, and a few other businesses. So we've got a few businesses in the commercial real estate field. Par Systems is a custom engineering and robotics automation company, and then a bunch of other smaller entities and business interests. I like to mention River Road Entertainment. They're the movie production company that produced 12 Years a Slave, Brokeback Mountain, and new movie coming out called Dreamin' Wild. So my job is a lot of fun. I get to provide strategic IT leadership for this diverse group of companies, something different every day. And it's an organization that's really focused on technology innovation and providing some really cool solutions to the various industries that we work in.
Yeah, awesome. And Rachel, you're too humble to say this, but you're also like CIO of the year, I feel like every year in the Minnesota area and across the country, and just doing some really cool stuff at Pohlad and with the different operating companies. And we got to work together on some of the commercial real estate stuff and engineering, manufacturing work. And we haven't directly worked together on Carousel Motor Group, but I just think some of the work they've done is so cool. I'm really excited to talk more about that and hear more about that today.
Yeah, no, I was excited to see the reaction to that article that I wrote on LinkedIn, and yeah, it's been fun talking with you about it, and just kind of like we say, looking under the hood at what they did right, the best practices that they followed to make this a successful digital transformation. You mentioned war stories, and I think there's so many war stories out there, so many what went wrong, which are very instructive, but it's so nice to see when something goes right.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I mean, we've talked about this. Being in the technology consulting space, the stats about the failed projects are everywhere. We use them. All the consulting firms say them because it's like a little bit of like, you better get it right. You don't want to be in the 80% or the whatever the numbers are now, 3 out of 4 that are struggling or failing to meet expectations. And there's just not a lot of thought leadership out there about, we did something really well. Here's what we did. Here's how to do it. And so I'm excited to talk about it from that perspective versus just the kind of scare tactics of don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. I think it's a great example. So I guess for starters, tell those that are watching about Carousel Motor Group.
Sure. Well, Carousel Motor Group, again, primarily luxury dealerships based here in the Twin Cities. We've got 2 Audi dealerships, 2 Porsche dealerships, BMW. The new store that we opened is a Ferrari dealership, the first and only in Minnesota. And then we also have some mainstream as well. So a Chevrolet, Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram dealership. So we're serving both ends of the spectrum there. And this new service offering, this new initiative, Carousel Online, is offering it's a new way of thinking about, a new way of delivering used cars through a completely digital process, completely online. So kind of and it's really first of its kind in terms of the level of service that's provided. They really wanted to look at the experience that customers have in our luxury dealerships and offer that same premium experience to online customers.
Yeah, what is interesting, you triggered a thought as you were explaining the kind of all digital experience. Is It's been interesting for me over the last year and a half building a new business and all the different things you have to go through with the banks and the insurance companies and all the different entities. And I was complaining to my wife a few months ago that one of the banks required me to fill out everything on paper, mail it in. Then they had someone, I guess, doing manual data input, and eventually it showed up in the online portal. But it just, I'm very digitally wired. In 2022, it was like, why do I have to do this kind of in an old school way? And car buying is something that is absolutely old school. We were talking about, our first experiences buying cars, and let me go back and talk to the sales manager. Let me talk to the boss and see what number I can get.
Well,
And
it
you
was
use
really
this, yeah,
yeah. So my son, he's 19 and he's going to college, and we wanted to get him a car to take to college. Our car that he gets to drive.
yep.
We were careful not to say his car. Parents out
I'm
there
sure.
understand
I'm
that.
sure to him it's his car though.
Right. Well, when I'm not around. But I remember when I was 19 buying my first used car, and the experience he's had, and just recently was so vastly different. I remember, the family all said, "Okay, we'll take your grandpa along because he's the best negotiator and he'll make sure that they don't take advantage of you." And then sitting there, next to grandpa, and we're
Yeah.
looking at, we're talking about this car, and then the guy says, "All right, I got to go back in the back and talk to my manager," and he's gone for like 20 minutes, and we're sitting there, sweating, and it's
Hmm.
just uncomfortable and miserable, and some lame music playing in the background. And he comes back with a number written on a piece of paper. I mean, it was
Oh, for
ridiculous.
sure.
And my son, he has this experience where, basically we pull up the website on my phone. I can very easily text over the two or three cars that I'm looking at that I think, might be good options. He looks at them on his phone, uh, you know, gives me some feedback again over text messages. He's off somewhere else. We're not sitting in the same room together. We decide on the one that we think is the best. I start going through the process. We were processing a trade in even. So, we
Yeah.
take photos of the trade in and submit them, finalize the whole thing. Next thing you know, his new car pulls up in the driveway, and the people
It
delivering,
actually showed up.
oh yeah, they deliver it right to the
Oh
driveway.
my gosh.
The people delivering it, they know, like, they understand what, the
Yeah.
experience that they're delivering here. So they're like, "Okay, you get in the front seat. We're going to take a couple pictures of you." I mean, he's just being treated like this,
Totally.
royalty rock star. It is such a different experience from what we recall.
It is crazy. And I think we've seen this across some other industries. The one that comes to mind is Zillow in the real estate industry, right? That just, Zillow or Redfin or whichever one you want to look at. I mean, I do this. I just sit and scroll on my phone. We're not looking for a house. I just look casually,
Yeah.
and that is such a um, what's the buzz term? Frictionless, I think, experience to just do that versus to go talk to a realtor, go get in a car, drive to the houses, look. But the automotive industry is one that for a while has been behind on that, and I think it's Carousel really has taken the lead and kind of leaped forward in delivering this. And what is interesting, and this will get into some of the stuff you wrote about, is the ultimate experience is very simple by design. It's
Right.
simple for the user, for the customer. It's You choose what you want and it shows up. I'm oversimplifying, but it's so easy. But again, under the hood, to use that term, there's so much technology and process and people change inside Carousel Motor Group to make that happen and to make it feel so seamless.
Well, and to
Um,
also make it comfortable because, I
yeah,
mean, we're all used to shopping online, right? I mean,
yeah,
especially in the last couple of years. I mean, thanks COVID, it made,
yeah,
a lot of people who were not going to ever adopt online shopping, they moved to it out of necessity. And so everybody's a lot more comfortable. But still, when you're talking about a car, that's not quite the same as,
yeah,
ordering a pair of socks or a book off of Amazon. Yeah, it's a little more
for
scary.
sure.
And so what Carousel Online did is we had to build in a lot of the information and the tools and the things that would give you that comfort level so that you're willing to spend that kind of money on an online purchase and just wait for something to show up in your driveway unseen,
Yeah.
right? And so they've got some really great tools. The entire Carfax package and they do a virtual inspection and walk around with the mechanic who
Hmm.
did the reconditioning process, and they'll give you the list of all the parts that they used in their reconditioning. They'll do they've now added a virtual test drive. Um,
Cool.
just the depth and the quality of the photos of the car, to really replace that comfort level of that you get from walking around and kicking the tires. And
Yeah.
in reality, they're able to provide much more data and information and create more reassurance than you would get from just walking around it and kicking the tires.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Well, let's dive in, because in
Okay.
the article you highlighted 7 or 8 key things that the team did really well that led to the success of Carousel Online. And the first one, which is something we've been talking about, is vision from the top. I think on these projects, when you have not only someone who has an idea but can articulate the vision to the team and get folks to rally around it, it makes all the difference. So where did the vision for this come from, and tell me more about that kind of origin
Yeah, I
story.
mean, a lot of the credit goes to our leadership of Carousel Motor Group, who really had a great vision. Chase Hawkins leads that organization, highly experienced, and he is that visionary leader who really saw the opportunity in this space. And the team, in their initial analysis, they shopped the competition, and they realized that a lot of the people who are trying to get into this space and selling used cars online, we're treating the customer like a transaction. But Chase has this firm belief in that premium experience from the luxury dealerships, and so they really set out to create that almost concierge feel to purchasing a used car online. And so the vision from the top, yeah, best practice that was absolutely followed and a big part of their success.
Yeah, very, very cool. I think the we talk a lot about vision from the top is important too,
Mhm.
because I think in a lot of organizations, these big projects that, hey, we're going to invest in X or build Y or develop Z. Sometimes there's vision from the middle, which is
Mhm.
good, it's valuable. But
Right.
if you can't get the top to be bought and understand, or if it's not coming from there, you end up running into all these roadblocks. And I think that's one of the things that
Yeah.
was really paramount to the success of this initiative. Is it was the top, and the whole team was
Yes.
bought in and rallying around it and kind of rowing the boat in the same
And
direction.
the concept, the idea came from the top level of leadership at Carousel Motor Group, but we've still got the ownership and corporate leadership above that. But they
Yeah,
were also on board and supportive and really understood and agreed with the vision. It was in line with where they want to take the
yeah,
organization as well. So having that, we did have to go up a little bit and
yeah.
get that buy-in and support, but it was there right away.
The next thing you talked about was dedicating resources. Tell me a little bit more about that and kind of what they did at Carousel.
Yeah, so I mentioned Dan Olson in the article. They tapped him, great experienced leader, to build his team, and he built a rock star team. And everyone on that team then has that same vision, right? The common mistake, and I know you've seen this, the common mistake is to just simply pull people who, maybe they have a little free time on their hands, or worse, to make it a side responsibility of
Yeah,
people who are already fully utilized. You're never going to succeed
yeah,
that way. That's probably one of the biggest downfalls of those 75-80% of projects that fail, is not dedicating the resources. But Carousel Online really did it right. And like I said, I know you've seen it
yeah.
done wrong, and hopefully you've seen it done right a time or two.
It's one of those things that is kind of in my playbook, for lack of a better term, that when we're working with a client and we get through that visioning and planning phase, right? We kind of get through the vision, we say, hey, we know where we're going. When you get to that next phase of, okay, we need to make it a reality, we need to develop a plan and assign resources. I just have it. It's probably in the top 2 or 3 things on my list that I know I'm going to have to argue with, persuade, debate, whatever term you want, with some leaders, not all, but some leaders, about assigning their top talent to the initiative,
Yeah.
because it's human nature. It's what I would do in their shoes too, to say, no, Rachel is my key player here. I need her for running the business. My sales might dip. My operations might get, uh, less rigorous or less well run or whatever the case may be. And that's all totally understandable. But if you say, well, Rachel will do it nights and weekends in her spare time, or
Yeah.
Michael's a B player, but he's got some free time, so we'll throw him at the project. It's just when you really get into hot water with the project, and it's not because folks are malicious or have bad intent or don't want it to be successful, but if you're really kind of pursuing that bold goal, you need to be bold about the talent that you
Right.
assign to it.
I'm just curious, have you seen examples where, a company went ahead and dedicated the A team to the project and the core business that was left behind did just fine? Maybe
Absolutely.
maybe even realized some things and was able to go
Yeah.
above where they were before.
I mean, I'm a huge sports fan, and college football in particular. And my
I knew a
beloved,
sports analogy was coming.
I know, my beloved Texas Longhorns almost beat Alabama this weekend. But one of the challenges is we had a bunch of injuries coming out of it. Several of our star players are injured, might not play this week. And while that is a bummer that we're not going to have our stars, the coach said, hey, my second string and third string team is getting a chance to step up. They're going to have to go play. They're going to have to carry the team. They're going to get way more reps than they would have otherwise sitting on the bench. And I think that, to your point, that's what often happens. If you take your quote unquote star talent, say, hey, we need you to go shift over to this strategic initiative, then most of the time, that next level, they're hungry to do more and to take on more responsibility. It's not like they're just twiddling their thumbs, right? And so I've found it to be an amazing talent development opportunity and pipeline to say, hey, we need you to make sure that our ongoing operations continue to thrive while so and so moves on to this strategic piece.
And moving your top players over to this new strategic initiative, that's a way to keep them engaged
Exactly.
and challenged, because maybe they're getting bored over here running the core business the day to day. Maybe
Exactly.
they need that challenge to keep them, to retain that great talent.
A top of mind example of that is a client of mine in the financial services space that they were fully committed from the top to putting the right talent in the right roles on the project. And the CEO was very clear in town halls with all the employees of what it meant to be assigned to the project, the team, and what it meant for everyone else, and how the expectation for them to step up was there. And again, I found most folks to find that inspiring and like a challenge that they wanted to accept. So yeah, I think it's so easy to get wrong, to just kind of be like, oh, we'll just use a little bit of this person, or the other piece that is we didn't really talk about that's hugely beneficial is sometimes there's I can say this as a consultant, there's some false logic that we can just put all consultants on the project and have consultants or contractors do it. And the right answer is the reverse. It's that maybe you need some external help to help lay out the plan, or technology expertise or whatever, blended with your all-star team. The place to use contractors is to backfill the daily operations and say, hey, we're going to bring in someone for a year, 18 months, and have them cover, whatever the ongoing work is, so that we can free up Rachel to go do this new work. That again, not perfect. They'll say, well, the contractor doesn't know our procure to pay process or our sales order to cash process, but like they can learn, they'll figure it out.
And that's the already well-defined process that hopefully
Exactly.
there's documentation and people that can train them on it, not this brand new thing that you're developing that hasn't been determined.
Exactly.
Great point. Well, I know Carousel, their leadership wanted to be careful that I did, create the impression that they just took all the best people over here and left the business.
Totally.
We had a great bench of just amazing talent on both sides. But the key point for them that led to success was that they did dedicate the resources and allowed them to fully focus on it. So that's lots of lessons to be learned from that.
I think, and we can move on, but I think you hit a good point here too, which is healthy transformation projects are often a reflection of healthy organizations. And so it's not like you can have an organization with the wrong talent, the wrong vision, the wrong approach, the wrong culture, and then magically do a tech project really well. Like they're very related. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Carousel is not a place that's got just B players roaming around and chilling and relaxing, right? It's like it's good vision, good people, good approach, good focus on the customer. And I think that then showed itself in the
Absolutely.
Carousel Online initiative.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
You talked also about it being a data-driven initiative. Could talk through that a bit, and then I'd love to share some stories on that as well.
Yeah, so they really did their homework up front in analyzing the market and identified really what was the market opportunity. And then also I mentioned, shopping around, shopping the competition and doing that analysis. That's more anecdotal analysis, but the data analysis that they did too on just the percentage of sales in this area and what types of vehicles that helped inform what inventory they should be looking at, and really proving out the model. So I know in some of the projects we worked on in the past, that's been really important is making it a truly data driven initiative and doing that homework up front.
Totally. Yeah, I think our very first collaboration together was with one of the commercial real estate entities that's part of the Pohlad family, and we as we went through that, it was very important to the executive sponsor on that effort to not only say where are we going looking inward, but also looking externally at the market and the competition and doing some benchmarking. And so
Mhm.
we did competitive benchmarking across data driven competitive benchmarking across a number of the key, I wouldn't even call them technology areas. It was almost more customer facing features and capabilities.
Mhm.
And it painted, you recall this, it painted a really compelling picture, not only to say we're behind, but to say they are continuing to invest. We need to invest and optimize and modernize just to keep up, let alone to leapfrog. I mean,
Leapfrog,
they've been
accelerate.
doing amazing work the last several years, and I know, or they've probably leapfrogged at this point, but that
We'll do
data
we'll
was
do an
so
interview,
key.
a fireside chat about that later.
Yes, exactly. But the data that everyone could rally around it, it wasn't subjective and fluff. It was like, hey, this is
Yeah.
what's actually happening. And the other thing I love that you shared is the shopping around, really looking at the experience, not just the pricing or the tech or the process, but the experience. I have these vivid memories as a kid. My dad was a district manager for H&R Block, the income tax place.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes when my aunt, my mom's sister, would come over for dinner, and she'd be like, "Oh yeah, I went to XYZ location today to look at the competition for your dad." My aunt was like the secret shopper. She would go to I don't know what they're called, the other income tax places to see what
Sure.
the experience was like. Like, how's the waiting room? How long's the wait time? What's the all this stuff? And he'd take
What's the
notes and like
parking look
jot
like?
this stuff down. And I was probably 8 or 10 years old, and I distinctly remember I'm like, why is she going to shop around? But sometimes you have to go actually experience it, not read about it or get some second or third hand information. I think the
Right,
team
right.
with Carousel Online did a really good job of understanding what the market
They really
was
did.
offering. The other thing that you pointed out in the article, and I think is so interesting and unique, is this idea of independence from the core business. Tell me more about that in this example.
Well, I already outlined, the Carousel Motor Group consists of all of these different dealerships. And so when they were starting up this new entity, everyone was excited about it. And so it would have been really easy to say, well, here, you can just, get some of our inventory, for a deeply discounted price or other ways of helping and supporting that business. And that seems on the surface like a great idea, right? But Dan and Carousel Online really wanted to make sure that what they were building was a viable business model that could stand alone by itself. So he was kind of aggressive about turning away some of those favors from the other dealerships. And then the other thing about it is, at the new car dealerships, they have a lot of requirements and obligations to the manufacturers, and so the
Hmm.
manufacturer drives a lot of the decisions around everything from the appearance of the stores to the technology that they use. So creating Carousel Online as an online pre-owned vehicle purchase process freed them up from those manufacturer requirements so that they were able to do things in the best way for the customer, for the user experience, rather than the way the manufacturers wanted it done. So in all those ways, creating that independence from the core business really gave them the advantage. It kind of, I think Angie Gustafson, who I quoted in the article as well, she said, there were no guardrails, which was kind of a double-edged sword. It meant that they didn't have anybody telling them what to do, but it also meant they didn't have any guardrails. And it was theirs to create it how they wanted to. And they did a great job at it.
Yeah, no, I loved that you pointed that out. I think that's something, if you read articles and hear keynotes, or well, you do most of these speeches now, but if you ever hear other people talking about these things, some of the things we're talking about, you'll hear often around having a vision and dedicating the right resources and funding. But there's some elements that I think are just so unique that you don't hear about. And this is one of them, this idea of independence and giving almost a blank slate for creativity. That's why, that's why when you look at disruptors in the market of these tech startups that will come in and just totally disrupt a 50 or 100-year-old company, part of it is they just don't have the constraints of like trying to move the Titanic. Yeah. And I think Carousel achieved that here by saying you're going to, trade on the brand and you have the expertise and the experience, but you're not constrained by some of how we operate right now or the OEM requirements or whatever the case may be. And that seems like it was just really critical to
it was
kind of enabling the success.
And I will say, there's kind of a but there, or an and. They did have the benefit of being able to build on sort of the solid foundation. And part of that is the business. And we talked about this already. They already had this strong culture and this great team. So they were able to build on that, but also the technology foundation. So I was directly involved a few years ago in completely revamping the technology platform for Carousel Motor Group. Started with, actually, this was probably more like 8 or 9 years ago. When I got involved, I'll admit it was kind of a hot mess. And so we had to completely redo the network architecture. They had half their businesses on one dealer management system and half on another. That's kind of the ERP for other dealerships. So we had to do a migration to bring them all onto one and standardize. We completely redid the phone system, moved them to an entirely new phone system, and then a cloud migration. I think we ended up eliminating, what was it, like 27 on-prem servers and moving them to Office 365. And we ended up having to do all this at once. So it was kind of an intense time period, but it was so critical for creating that solid foundation. And then fast forward, 6 or 7 years later, they were able to make another communications platform migration, and they moved to the Zoom phone system, which then became a key part of the customer interface that made Carousel Online possible. Really, talking with Angie, she said, "I don't know how we would have done it on our previous phone system. It was the right phone system at that time, but not moving forward, to this stage." So that having that solid foundation was really critical to their success, and that was something that they could leverage because they're part of this broader organization. And it wasn't like taking the favors and getting free inventory. It wasn't about the business model. It was about that technology infrastructure and foundation.
Yeah. Well, I know you were so instrumental in a lot of that work to lay that foundation. And I think what's so interesting about it is if you ask your son about his Carousel Online experience, he's not going to talk about getting to a unified DMS or the networking changes or the cloud. He shouldn't care. As a customer or consumer, you shouldn't care. But all that stuff was kind of table stakes before you can deliver a really good kind of end user experience. And I think a lot of organizations want to jump to the cool stuff. Like, let's jump to the really modern, digitize everything. And sometimes you got to kind of do the ditch digging work to make that more successful. And I think it's a great.
Well, I mentioned in the article I'd had lunch with Wayne Pazinski, who's the head of fixed operations for the core business for Carousel Motor Group, and I met him 9 years ago when I first got involved, and it was a mess. And, at this lunch, he said to me, he said, back then, if our manufacturer came to us with just a basic, hey, you got to start using this new app or this new technology, he said, we knew there was just no way that our infrastructure, our IT platform was going to support it. And so we would just kind of throw up our hands, like, why even ask? After we made all those changes, he said, now they come along with something, there's no question. We
Yeah.
know we're going to be able to get it done. We're going to probably get it done faster than their expectations. And that's what created the environment where they could even pursue this kind of innovation, and this business transformation, because they had the technology platform that would just handle it,
Yeah. Flexible and adaptable and modern and all those things
and
that,
properly resourced. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So kind of, along those lines, talking about the technology piece,
Mhm.
I think in this case, one really smart move, as I understand it, was leveraging some existing technology to help kind of accelerate the journey. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So this, it's so common and just almost intuitive or instinctual for a business to think that they have to build it themselves in order for it to be their innovation, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, as a former programmer, I still fight that urge at
Yeah.
times, right? But what they did is, we actually did some research and looked around to see, others who were doing this, and we found that, one of our competitors in the area had been working on a platform like this, and they'd been working on it for over 6 years. So we said, well, that's not the way to do it.
Yep.
And so, Carousel Motor Group, their leadership, they talked to their partners, and originally they were talking to one partner, to Cox Automotive, and said, hey, you guys have a lot of the tools that we use, in this broader suite of tools. Cox Automotive is a huge player in this space. They've got a lot of the products and the services already. And they said, we want to put some of these things together, and we want to develop something that will, create this online platform for the pre-owned vehicles. And Cox said, you know what, actually, we're already working on it too. And so that just became this natural partnership. And they leveraged the Essential platform of Cox, and they stitched together a bunch of their other products and services that they were already using, and some new ones, to create the Carousel Online experience. And Chase will tell you, it was so important to have that strong partner who was willing to, as he puts it, to co-author
Hmm.
customer experience. And they were just as on board with the vision as what Carousel was. And so
Yeah.
they didn't have to start from scratch and make it all themselves. They were able to accomplish this, game changing transformation for their business in a really short time frame. It was less than a year.
Yeah.
And get that out to market, and make a real difference in a quick time frame. And I know you've seen things like that
Yeah.
as well.
I mean, yeah, I've got a good story on this. Before that though, it is striking to me the timeline for this initiative, because I recall a year ago, a little more than a year ago, you talking about this being in its early stages, and then when I saw your blog post of like, oh, it's great, it's awesome, my son bought it, I'm like, already,
Yeah.
and I think, again, clear vision, good approach, but also not reinventing the wheel on some of the core technology components was a real accelerator, and I think it de-risked some of
Mm,
the initiative.
absolutely.
And it is tough because there's just human nature. It's like, I can build this myself, it can be bigger, badder, better, it can have my logo on it, and sometimes that's the right answer. But if there's true secret sauce or differentiators you want to put into it, but if you can pull a piece in and help kind of get to the vision you're looking at, I think that I'm big on this idea of coopetition. Like,
Yeah. Mhm.
sometimes cooperating with your competition on certain things can be good for everyone.
Absolutely.
And I think that's definitely the case here. One of the places where I saw this was with an oil and gas company, oil field services company that I worked with, and we had crafted this vision for them to implement remote monitoring or telemetry on all their units, kind of all across the country, so that they would have a real time view of what was happening. And they could kind
Sure.
of, at the mothership, see the activity happening everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a strong desire to build a proprietary um, remote monitoring capability using some parts off the shelf and some proven technology, but really to make it their own.
Right.
With the idea being we want to own this, we want to productize this, all the right vision. But we really worked with them on an evaluation of kind of the cost benefit of build versus buying a proven technology out on the in the marketplace, and they ended up going with the buy or the lease kind of model. And it was a little bit of a tough pill to swallow around it's not totally ours. We're kind of pulling a piece in,
Yeah.
but same thing. They got it deployed faster than they anticipated. The cost was lower than if they would have built it themselves. The customer, the end customers, they don't have any visibility into what the back end, what the logos on the back end
Yeah.
technologies are and how that fits together. And
Yeah.
some of the
What's your goal?
concerns,
Is it pride and ego, or is
yeah,
it to actually accomplish business results? Because
exactly.
nobody's going to pay you, just, more
Yeah.
just because you did it yourself.
And I think the other thing that particularly now is more prevalent in addition to the pride and ego piece is the intellectual property and data sharing
Mhm.
components that obviously for good reasons folks
Right.
get kind of antsy about. You can solve those with expensive attorneys writing the contracts, right? I mean, that you can solve that up front. It doesn't have to be a deal breaker. And it can, you can spend a little time up front hashing that out, and it can make the rest of the initiative so much more successful. So again, not always the right answer, but I think more and more it's becoming a compelling option, and certainly it helped here.
Yeah. Very true.
I think the last kind of key thing you called out was funding.
Yeah.
And gosh, I think we've both seen that done really well and really poorly across
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
initiatives. But talk about
Well,
the
we
carousel.
funded the project, the initiative properly, and then I would say just as importantly, the expectations from the top, from ownership and executive leadership and at the parent company were realistic for a startup business.
Mhm.
Fortunately, again, it was within a successful, proven line of business, so there was that trust there. But they really did have the right understanding of what to expect, and we're still in the ramp up phase of sales and maybe for quite a while. But ownership gets it. They know that we're building value rather than generating profits and paying
Yeah,
it back immediately.
yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing we talked about offline, I don't know, a couple months ago, um, is I think there's often at the start of an initiative when you're in that visioning phase and everyone's excited, the room, virtual or in person, the room is filled with boldness, creativity, courage, willingness to take risks. That
Mhm.
translates to funding, right? That translates to an executive saying, I'll approve XYZ amount for this initiative. And everyone's like, yes, let's go, let's rock and roll. Everybody's excited. The minute the project starts, everybody goes into like preservation mode
Yeah.
and cost conservation mode. And I think some of it is driven by the stats about 80% of these projects failing, that everyone just gets so nervous about not wanting to be in the 80% that you lose some of that courage and bold decision making and
And
risk
I think it's
taking.
also it's also when the invoices start rolling in too, and people
Exactly.
realize, oh, now we got to start paying for all of this grand
Yeah,
ambition, and it gets a little scary, especially if you start to get other players involved. If you start getting
totally.
more of the financial side involved.
Totally. And I think, I mean, again, we've both seen this where you will quote unquote fund it properly at the start.
Hmm.
But then as the project evolves, as the initiative or the product or whatever, as it evolves, and you need more money for something because something will go wrong or there will be a surprise or there will be whatever,
Scope creep.
then that's I think often when organizations don't quite um, solve it appropriately in terms of maybe we need to grant 5% or 10% extra versus being a little penny wise and pound foolish. It's easier to kind of
I
point
remember
fingers
you
and
you
Monday
told me a
morning
great
quarterback.
story about this in another one of your customers. I think it was also an oil and gas customer, and I
Yeah,
remember hearing the story. And yeah, it's what
yeah,
happened, right?
totally. And again, it's human nature. It's like I think I would do it's like when you manage I think you just remodeled a home. When you manage a home project or it's the same thing. There's going to be a cost overrun that the GC is going to come and say, well, the cost of lumber went up, or the cost of my labor went up, or the cost of whatever. And it's like, well, I only budgeted X. Now you're surprising me. I just think it's how we're wired to go, well, what could you do with half of that additional money? Or what could you, and that's when, again, you got to manage the cost. But sometimes I think the organizations just shoot themselves in the foot a little bit as the funding decisions go on throughout the project. The other thing that I've had a lot of success with is agreeing on a contingency up front. I think often organizations want to say it's going to cost X, and getting the organization to say plus or minus 10% or plus or minus 20%, having that contingency fund then for program leadership or project leadership to know, I really don't want to spend that, but there's something there and I need to pick my battles on what it's worth to spend some of that. That can be another good way to manage that.
Yeah, very good point. But yeah, this was, another one of those best practices where we did it right, and the results are showing that it was the right approach.
Yeah. Well, what's next? Like what's next for Carousel Online?
Yeah, so they have a great roadmap. So even during the development process, the team identified other ideas and vision, expanding on the vision and things that they could do, but they didn't let that get in the way of launching on time and on budget. But they created that future vision, that future roadmap of the subsequent phases. And so they're adding new features. And they have something really cool. They call it Strategy Tuesday, where the leadership team of Carousel Online will get together and review the transactions that have taken place over the prior week and look, kind of pick them apart and look at them and say, how could we have done that better? From their own experience. And then also certainly customer surveys are huge, getting the feedback from the customers. Thus far, they're so excited to report they've had nothing but 5-star reviews.
Awesome.
The customer feedback is really showing that they've made the right decisions. They're on the right track. But they're taking those suggestions and feedback and then their own observations and learning and creating the future roadmap and the vision for the product.
That is so cool. Well, if you need me to come test drive a Ferrari, if it would help in your research at all, happy to do that next time I'm up in the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
And I guess you don't have to be there, right?
Right. But for Carousel Online, yeah, it's not just a local or regional thing. You can hop on and pick out your car, place your order today, and I bet they can probably have it delivered to you down in Texas by the weekend.
Yeah, perfect.
So
excellent.
A national service offering.
Well, man, I have really enjoyed talking through this. I loved reading the article, but it's even better to talk through some of the stories in real life, or virtually at least. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining us for our first FlexPoint Fireside Chat. And I'm really excited to see and hear what happens next with Carousel Online.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And I'm excited to see what happens next with FlexPoint, and following your growth and progression has been so much fun. Looking forward to the next opportunity when we work together, and looking forward to coming back on a future fireside chat as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Michael. Take care.